Alrighty, Pax Romana. Start off. Obviously, I just went through the playthrough, and most of you will not have watched that, but that's actually always where most of the information is. You should at least bounce around through them to get a feel for the games. Not necessarily the first ones, because I'm usually going in detail learning the rules and showing them. But one of the things about PAX was I had tremendously high expectations for this one. And I have to say I'm a little disappointed. I don't think it's a bad game, but it didn't meet the expectations, the hopes, whatever you want to say I had for it. Let's take a look at components. You got a paper map full of bubbles, which actually works pretty damn well here. A little bit tight and close together in some places, especially where these water lines, where there are a lot of lines on the map at one place. Sometimes it's a little hard to see what's going on. But functional for the most part. Could use a blown up map. That would, of course, have a bare footprint and therefore suck, right? Counters. Again, functional. A little bit of weird stuff with some of them. For example, the numeric counters back printed in different kinds of numbers. So like some of the ones have 10s on the back, but most of them have 2s. A little bit of confusion there. Biggest issue with the counters, though, is there's a significant number that are missing from the game. And this is not just my game. It's obviously the actual presentation. Now, presumably, if and when there's a reprint, it will end up having sort of a deluxe treatment with piles of stuff from the C3Is. I guess there were like 3 of them that gave expansions. It would be really nice if they included it all, and it would be even better if they sold a little upgrade kit like they did with some other games to give you, you know, hey, here's the extra counters you need, which would be neat, but even more so additional scenarios, because one of the things I immediately start feeling with this game is, okay, is that it? You know? I'm not sure how much additional scenarios would change that. To tell you the truth, the scenario I played felt like it had too few players. That would be my biggest objection. I don't know if any of the C3Is add an additional player, but given the scenario I was playing, Egypt should be a player in it. And the fact that they're not is kind of a, okay, well, you didn't want to put out the pieces for them, probably. Granted, there's a play balance issue there. Certainly, Berg puts forward, hey, you play the historical scenario, we're boning the East by splitting them in half, and if you play with the even more historical rules, we end up doing harm to Carthage, and we end up doing harm to the Greeks as well. All of which might kind of balance out, because Rome is in this interesting position at the beginning of the game where, well, as in my game, it is actually possible you could just bring them down. And like sort of Rome has this slight advantage over everyone else. They have better units. They have the legions. The legions are a little bit stronger. Probably isn't going to be a game changer, but it gives them this little edge that if they pass that initial area, may have a little bit of an advantage on everyone else. They're able to buy an extra 25%, or no, 30%, 33% of their forces with the same cost, as long as they're doing the heavies. That's kind of neat. They have counterbalancing penalties. For example, little black guys here, the Soldier of Fortune, they can't use for that. I'm trying to remember what their bonus is for that. They get the Dictator, which I don't think is terribly advantageous. It's still one of their damn leaders. Anything else with the counters? I don't know. The cards, again, functional. A lot of text on them, but I found them fairly easy to remember. There aren't a lot of them in any player's hands. Even solo playing, they didn't present much of a difficulty because you only have a couple of them at any one time. The little objectives, well, we'll get to that with the rules. They're a cute idea. they didn't work out as... They didn't become as important as I hoped they were. In the original reading of the rules, hey, these are all just victory points. With the change in the rules, they become not so much victory points, but more of those GOP points for the most part. Some of them are still pure victory points, which means they're a lot less important to get. And that was kind of one of the problems. They looked like such a cool idea, these hidden objectives that could really make a big difference. Well, they didn't matter. What matters is knocking your opponents out. And I would guess that the majority of games actually do end up with someone coming to an overall win in terms of, okay, nobody's going to be able to do anything for the rest of the game except this guy, like happened with my game. I just think the dynamics of multiplayer play and of this particular rule set are likely to create that a lot of the times. And I'll get to more on the game itself in a little bit. The rules are not atrocious, but, well, there are definitely ambiguities and little problems with them. The charts and tables, my God, this is a pile of charts and tables for a game that's so simple in play. And, alright, we'll get to it. So that's where it really comes down. This is a game with a lot of rules, a lot of charts and tables, a lot of little fiddly bits, and they just don't sort of add up to all that you want them to. The play of the game felt not too much different from something I played not too long ago, which was, let's pull this down, another Ancients game. Much, much simpler game. King David, Clash of Worms. This was a really, really simple game. And, you know, kind of like, I'm trying to think of something that would, I could match with it. I'm going to say History of the Roman Empire, or even Imperial Governors. These are fun games. You can get together with a group of people, and they can be a lot of fun. Usually you want more than 4 for them. Very much becomes a, okay, let's work together against him, he's a threat, let's neutralize him. I think the 4-player dynamics are such that you're not going to hit the kind of stasis, not pure stasis, flexible stasis, if that makes sense. The kind of, nobody's going to get knocked out because everybody's going for this kind of balance of power situation. I don't think that happens here because it's too possible for, well, the 3-player dynamics, which falls into, the board is big enough that people can't defend themselves across the whole border against 2 enemies. And I think that's fairly likely to happen, that someone's going to get knocked out. Someone is going to be caught between 2 enemies and not have an ally who can really help them. With more players, there's still that possibility of people getting knocked out, but there's more of a dynamic to maintain the balance. If somebody starts getting ahead, more people are pushing against them, especially the way the victory points work in this, where everybody's trying to look for a place in the victory points. Knocking people out isn't that important, but if there's very few people on the game, knocking people out becomes possible enough that I think it ends up happening, because obviously it's better to just knock them out and make it so they can't get any more victory points or can't really contest the game anymore than it is to be sitting trying to play for, you know, a top placement in the balance of power type game. If you've got the advantage and you can take and you can push it, then you will in this game. And that's why I think that quite often it will end up like my game did, with someone coming out clearly on top. Now, historically, that pretty much happened, didn't it? Let's see what date we get this to. 50 BC. What do we got left? We got Egypt left at that point. That's about it. So yeah, you know, Rome took most of the bed by that point. They had taken out Carthage. They had taken out Greece. And as to the east, well, they had taken out the Seleucids. They were down to just the Ptolemaics. So I don't have an objection to it on a historical grounds. I do have kind of an objection on there's a lot of rules and little bits to learn in this thing that just don't feel like they add that much to it. You end up not feeling like you're in too different a game than, say, a much, much simpler version of this. And I would actually say that this is harder to grasp the rules for, probably for me at least, with the point-to-point movement and all the crap that has to do with weird interception rules and all kind of stuff like this. Or maybe it's just my poor brain isn't working as well as it once was. But I would say this is on par at least. Not too different from something like Imperium Romanum 2. Now, what is the difference here? Imperium Romanum 2 is actually afflicted by a lot of the same things. You sit down, you play it out, it's an 8-hour game, with some people getting knocked out early, and you say, yeah, I could have played something a lot simpler than this, and had almost the same level of kind of engagement, decision-making, etc. But the one difference is I think Imperium Romanum 2 gives a little bit more richness in terms of variance in the scenarios. Certainly in terms of the number of scenarios, although they all kind of feel the same. There are some significant differences in terms of unit types and stuff that come into play over the era. I don't feel like there's any great... I feel like you spend more effort on the operational side of Imperium Romanum, though, than you do on this. And in a sense, this is kind of an advantage on this, because it does strip away that level. But there are rules in here that you just kind of say, it's just not worth looking up. You know? I didn't feel that way about Imperium Romanum. I just felt like, I was left with this same... Geez, I would have had as much fun with a much, much lighter game. And I don't feel like I really gained a whole lot of extra insight or a whole lot of extra story from this simpler, or from this deeper, heavier game. I feel like this one is even more towards the less story, and still at about the same in terms of the rules investment. At least for me, the difficulty was higher. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. This is something that I could definitely see getting people together. Although I would definitely want more options and scenarios, more different sets of players, and, just more flexibility in there. You got this map. You could, and with city counters that are placeable, as opposed to Imperium Romanum, which is stuck with a particular era of history. That's one thing. The scope of this is tremendous. This takes you from, just about when Sword of Rome ends, and it's a much, much bigger game, to almost the Imperial era. But there's very little to do with the internal politics. There's a rule somewhere about size, which probably... Actually, I don't think it even came into effect on mine. There's an optional rule with if you get too big. Yeah, Civil War Type 2. Once you get 4 territories, you're in danger of a civil war. Basically, you get a roll. The territories are the big areas. If you get a 12 or higher with 1 added per area, you end up losing some stability, you have units removed, just like the Civil War from the other version. It's a way of kind of hitting the leader. Well, 4 territories is damn tough. And it's not unreasonable. I mean, Rome did not have trouble with civil war until they were quite potent, right? They owned most of the Mediterranean world before your Sulla and Marius type scenarios. But that's that. I would be interested in seeing this extend into the Imperial period. this could actually, I think, handle very, very different game. But as almost a separate expansion, this could almost handle the campaign that Imperium Romanum 2 could never do. What would that campaign be? It might be ideologically based. It might involve forces being swayed one way or another. But you've got the components and the core rule set here, I think, to actually be able to enact something like that. Maybe with kind of a Republic of Rome tinge to it. Maybe? I don't know. I was hoping for a lot more from this. More in terms of what my experience would be. Not really in the rules. I didn't really expect the game to be significantly different than it was, but I was expecting my impression as I came away from playing it to be one of them, oh wow moments. Here I Stand was one of them, you know? Obviously Europa Universalis. I'd say Twilight Struggle after some time. This didn't quite reach that level out. This fell fairly far short, actually. But I like it. I'm looking forward to getting to the Ancient World games, two-player games, but I'm hoping that they're a little bit, I don't know, they have enough strength in them about the political rules, etc. to really capture me. I'm hoping. So far, I'm trying to think. You know, for all my love of bird games, I think they almost all fall into the two-player and most of them tactical. So far, I haven't really felt like he's captured the kind of political dynamic in a game that I really wanted. And this could have had it, I think, and I'm not quite sure why it doesn't. It's got a lot of chrome, but the chrome doesn't do the right thing for me somehow. I don't know. Hey, if you order this from GMT, you might want to tell them, hey, make sure we get that Callendale guy a copy of an upgrade for it. Well, if enough of you order. If you boost it over that P500 somehow. Because it is a fun game, and if you don't have something else of this nature, I think you'll have tremendous fun with it. This is right in my wheelhouse in terms of the types of games that I love and have. So I have a lot of things like it, and I don't think this is going to be a favorite for me. But if I had found this first, it might have been. You know, it's just other things, you know, have closer emotional ties. All right, up with that.